Julian Alvarez to Atletico Madrid is gathering momentum after La Liga club hold positive talks with the champions, Manchester City. Hi, good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show. Coming up, why Chelsea could hold the key to that move and why a new signing at PSG could benefit Manchester United. Tim Thornton, Dharmesh Sheth have been joined by the former West Bromwich Albion sporting director, Luke Dowling, to discuss the day's top stories. Welcome along, Luke. Now, we'll also have the latest on Conor Gallagher. He's in Madrid tonight to discuss a move to Atletico. Was he treated unfairly at Chelsea, though? And West Ham have completed the signing of the Germany striker Nicholas Fullkrug for just under £30 million. So, Luke is with us, former sporting director. I've been wanting to ask this question for ages. What does a sporting director actually do?
Well, obviously, you can imagine this time of year, the transfer window being open, it's an extremely busy time for any sporting director. And their mainly focus will be on signing players. They have the pressure from the manager of getting the players in as soon as they possibly can. There'll also be a pressure from the supporters, of that particular club, because they want players to come in. And people tend to think that the window was shut on the 1st September and then you only see the sporting director again on the 1st of January. Most of us would like that to happen. Obviously, once that does, you feel you can breathe a bit relaxed, but there's so much more that goes on at the football club. Majority of sporting technical directors, whatever title they have, they then have the academy, sports science, the medical, the other staff to deal with. So there's something coming your way all the time. They just seem to get parked a little bit more during a transfer window because it's naturally players that are going to go and affect the team that you need to get in this period.
When the role was first introduced into this country, there was a lot of pushback from clubs because it was not what we'd seen before. Do you feel it's being more accepted now?
I think it certainly is more accepted, and I don't know if that's down to more of the foreign ownership or more of the foreign head coaches, because they are used to having it in the countries they've worked in previously. I think the initial reaction of managers was they thought, is this sporting director, whoever he is, going to come in and sign the players, and I'm not going to have a say. I'm yet to find a club or a sporting director where that sporting director signs the players and the manager's not involved. It's just a way of taking that load away from the manager, like it used to be many years ago, and just basically letting them concentrate on the day-to-day training, prepare the team and ultimately get the best result on the weekend or during the week whenever they're playing. But I think that is slowly going now, and that might be because purely the amount of foreign coaches that are over in this country working.
OK, well, I wonder whether a sporting director is involved in the Julian Alvarez move to Atletico Madrid. How close is this one, Tim?
Moving in the right direction after positive talks between the two clubs. We touched on this a little bit earlier on, didn't we? Discussions are underway to finalise a fee and the payment schedule. City are demanding at least 5 times the £40 million they paid River Plate for him. Pep said at the weekend that he was expecting him back after the Olympics. Alvarez himself said he'd make a decision after the Olympics in Paris, but this one looks to be moving quite quickly now. And linked to this, Chelsea are in talks to sign the Atletico Madrid striker Samu Omarodian. Now, the fee being discussed here is around £35 million. Any deal will depend on Atletico getting a striker in, so that's the link with Alvarez. He's a player with huge potential, still only 20. He's another that's actually featuring at the Olympics. He's playing for Spain. He spent last season on loan at Alvarez. So, yeah, exciting developments, and it is a bit of a transfer jigsaw puzzle when it comes to strikers.
Yeah, and talking of that jigsaw puzzle, it's just going to be very interesting to see what happens now with Romelu Lukaku and Victor Osimhen, because a couple of weeks ago, that was the big deal we were potentially talking about. Romelu Lukaku going to Napoli on a permanent deal. They won around £35 million for him. But within those talks, Chelsea getting Victor Osimhen, and Napoli wanted to have a permanent aspect attached to this deal. But given his release clause, I don't think Chelsea would want to go over £100 million. So maybe there was talk of a loan with an option that became an obligation in that deal. The reason Napoli would want a permanent aspect of that deal is because the wages that Romelu Lukaku is on are high. Victor Osimhen's wages are incredibly high as well. They couldn't have a situation come next summer where both Lukaku and Osimhen were at the football club. Now, because of these developments today with regard to Julian Alvarez potentially going to Atletico Madrid and Omarodion coming to Chelsea, does that mean that the Osimhen-Lukaku deal is not going to happen? Well, the information that we're getting is that those talks are continuing still, because Napoli are desperate to sign Romelu Lukaku. Antonio Conte is their head coach. He managed Romelu Lukaku when Inter Milan won the Serie A title in 2021, and Lukaku was absolutely extraordinary, earned his move to Chelsea with that form. Whereas Victor Osimhen, Napoli do know that they'd have to offload him if they wanted to bring someone like Lukaku in. And maybe Chelsea can see an opportunity there by thinking, let's get him on loan first, let's get an obligation in. And if they bring in a young striker like the guy from Atletico Madrid and Osimhen, maybe one can learn from someone like Victor Osimhen. So all deals look like they're on the table still for the Alvarez deal to Atletico Madrid, Omarodion to Chelsea, and that potential deal that we'll see Lukaku go to Napoli, Osimhen potentially still go to Chelsea.
Tim, apologies, I meant Alvarez was at the Olympics with Argentina. Luke, sporting director's view, at City, how much of a problem is this for City, letting a World Cup winner go, knowing you've got to get a replacement in who knows he's going to be a backup to Erling Haaland?
I think that's the issue they've got, that Alvarez will want to play. And I'm sure if Atletico Madrid are in for him, he'll have some certainties that he will be there. He'll go there to be the main striker. The only thing that I would say with City is they're so good at what they do. They'll know who's coming in already if Alvarez is going to go. I don't think it will hurt them too much, even if they have to get to the January window to get that replacement in, just because of the cover they've got and the way they play. We saw them before Haaland turned up, play without a striker. So they will have their targets, and I only believe they'll let him go if they believe one of their targets is ready to come in.
Right, OK. Tim, let's stay with Atletico. They might get Alvarez. Looks like they're going to get Conor Gallagher. How close?
Yeah, we understand he's in Madrid to complete this deal. Chelsea accepted a deal in the region of £34 million. They weren't able to reach consensus on a longer contract for him. Darmish, I'm sure, will explain in more detail. He made his final decision 1 minute before the deadline. So this one looks like it's proceeding. We expect it to happen, and we expect him to sign a 5-year contract.
He teed you up, Darmish, so tell us, how did we get here?
This is incredible, this whole scenario, actually. There was interest from Atletico Madrid throughout the summer, we know that. We know that there was a big gap in valuation between what Chelsea wanted and what Atletico wanted to pay. Then last week, we had that breakthrough where Chelsea brought down their price so that they could agree a deal with Atletico Madrid. So the question is, why would Chelsea do that? There are two sides to this. First of all, it was made clear to Gallagher, we're told, that he would only be a squad player under Enzo Maresca. So the contract that they offered him was kind of reflective of that. It was a 2-year deal plus the option of a further year. Now, it's understood that Chelsea were quite sympathetic towards Gallagher and his England aspirations, so that if he was only going to be a squad member, him being part of the England squad now, would he be able to maintain that if he was only a squad member? Did he need to go somewhere where he was going to be playing more regularly than he would have done had he stayed at Chelsea? So, in a way, it was almost Chelsea helping Conor Gallagher to try and get that move. But that's if you look at it on face value. Chelsea are doing all they can to help Conor Gallagher out. But you've got to also remember it was a 2-year contract that they offered him, plus a 1-year option. So the cynics might say, were Chelsea actually trying to offload Conor Gallagher? Now, the information we got from one source is that Chelsea made 2 contract offers to Conor Gallagher. The first one was made 4 days before the European Championships. And that was just after he had rejected the chance to join Aston Villa. And that contract offer, 4 days before the Euro started, was for 2 years plus a 1-year option. Sound familiar? The second contract offer, that came just the day before Atletico Madrid got wind of the fact that Chelsea were going to lower their terms, and they agreed. And what was that offer? It was identical, we are told, to the one that was offered to Conor Gallagher just 4 days before the Euro. So, as far as Conor Gallagher was concerned, I don't think he wanted to leave Chelsea. He was open to signing a new contract at Chelsea, provided it was a long-term contract and in line with the length of contract that the rest of the midfielders in his position were getting. We know we're in an era at Chelsea whenever we talk about a new signing, whenever we talk about a new contract, we are like aghast because it's Chelsea have given them a 7-year contract plus a 1-year option, whereas they felt Conor Gallagher should only be afforded a 2-year contract plus a 1-year option. So it's up to people to decide whether you take this on face value or take it from a cynic's perspective, that either Chelsea were offering him a chance to get regular first-team football, or they were actually using their tactics to try and get him to leave and effectively choosing the club he was going to go to because they didn't want him to go to a Premier League rival.
I'm going to ask the sporting director, should we be cynical about this?
I think the contract, if it's right in the 2+1, I think that tells Conor everything he needs to know about what Chelsea were trying to do, is my opinion. I know Conor. When I was at West Brom, we got promoted to the Premier League. We took him on loan, gave him his first Premier League experience. And the one thing that I will say is this would have been an extremely difficult decision for Conor. I saw when I dealt with him, I saw when his dad come up, when we signed him with his agent, Paul. Chelsea is close to their heart. They're massive Chelsea fans. And for him, he was telling us, for him just to go back and play for Chelsea was what he dreamed of. So for him to then make a decision where there is a contract on the table, from what we've been told, whatever length it is, we don't know, but there is a contract there. For him to make that decision to then leave, he wouldn't have taken lightly. This would have been, he'd have been thinking a lot about this. The family would have done. And there's not that often when a transfer happens where I feel everyone wins. I think this is a great move for Conor. I think it's a great piece of business for Atletico with the price they paid. And I think from Chelsea's point of view, with a player that could potentially this January sign a pre-agreement with a club abroad and then leave and walk away in 10 months' time for nothing, I think they've done well. So I actually think everyone wins. I think in 2 years' time, we'll see a different Conor Gallagher, because playing under Simone at Atletico, the way they play, I think he'll come on leaps and bounds.
Luke, can I just ask you something? There was a feeling that he would only become a squad player under Enzo Maresca because of the possession-based style that Enzo Maresca would want to adopt. Now, is that fair on Conor Gallagher? Does that fit his style? And could, from what you know and what you know of him as a player and a person, could he have adapted to Enzo Maresca's style to maybe earn that kind of new contract that he would have wanted?
I think Conor's got the ability to handle the ball, as we'd say, but I think Enzo is a more possession-based coach. I think he will see others in front of him, and I wouldn't say a possession is Conor's main strength. He come to us at West Brom in the Premier League. We didn't have the ball that much, but he would go and get it back for us. If you look the following season, he went to Crystal Palace on loan. Under Roy Hodgson, the way they set up, they didn't have the ball that much either. And he goes and gets the ball back, and he looks effective. He's very, very effective. He will get goals in that system as well. I think the way Chelsea are trying to play now under this new head coach, I can see why the coach is saying you would be a squad player because you don't fit in. The other thing I think we need to take into consideration as well is Lavia, the boy he signed last year. He's been injured a year. If I'm right, I think Enzo, the manager, would have had him at Man City for a year, so he knows his qualities. He'll be like a new signing because he hasn't yet played. So I think with him, Caicedo, Fernandes, I think that's his three that he wants. Obviously, he's brought in Dewsbury Hall, that is lovely in possession, that he knows from Leicester. So I think that's made up their minds. But I think he suits Simone like he suited Pochettino, the way he plays. Enzo, maybe not so much.
How difficult is it as a sporting director when there's a change of coach in the summer? Because presumably you've got your plans moving forward and suddenly the coach changed. Pochettino, for example, he made him a key player at Chelsea. The coach changes. So how difficult is it in your role?
Do you know what, the fact that Conor didn't sign a new contract when Pochettino was the manager tells me that they knew what was going to happen long before it did happen. Because if we all thought Mauricio would be there this year, I'm sure Conor would have signed a contract way before the Euros. It can be difficult in the role that I'm in or I've been in. However, when you're having discussions with the managers coming in, you're going through the squad with them before they've been appointed, who they like, what system they want to play, who will fit into that. So that Chelsea board, owners, sporting directors would have had an idea of what Enzo, who he does and doesn't like, before he'd have been appointed anyway. So that would have come into it as well.
Because Mike asked about the role of a sporting director. He's part of the role to be 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of everybody else and have those plans in place.
Yeah, you've got to try and be ahead of the game as much as you can. And the longer you do it and the longer the manager's there with you, the more easy it is to have that step in place.
What about Chelsea's recruitment? It's raised a lot of eyebrows, all these long-term contracts, as Dharmesh said. What do you make of the way they're doing business?
I can sympathise with them for a little bit, and the reason why I say that was the last signing we made at West Brom in the Premier League was Carl Grant from Huddersfield. Now, we was in a situation where the ownership, where we didn't have any funds to go and buy Carlin. Slaven Bilic was the coach. He wanted him. He was making a lot of noises in the press to put pressure on us to go and get him. Yeah. And the only way we could get him was to pay Huddersfield a certain amount of money over 6 years. So because the payment is over 6 years, the contract has to reflect that. Now, we did it purely because that's all we could afford. I think other clubs are now doing it to get around FFP. Yeah. The only question mark I would have is I'm not too sure how hungry it then makes the player. Potentially, someone sitting on a 4, 5, 6 year contract. Don't get me wrong, there'll be players that go and play to the best of their ability anyway, but sometimes do they lose that fire in the belly a little bit because they've got that big long-term contract. Yeah,
that is interesting. Dharmesh, I'm being told you've got a line from us for Manchester United. What have you got?
Yeah, this is to do with Lenny Yoro. You remember he got injured during pre-season in that game against Arsenal, where Manchester United have just released some information about his condition. He's just had successful surgery on his foot injury. His rehab starts now, and United are looking forward to him returning to fitness in around 3 months, which was what the initial prognosis was. So that's the situation with Lenny Yoro. And just connecting that with transfers, it's our understanding that even though he's got this injury, we don't think that that will be the reason Manchester United would go into the market for a central defender. It will be to do with squad space. If they release a defender, that's when they'll try and bring someone else in. They don't want to bring in a replacement for Lenny Yoro, because Lenny Yoro will be back before the next transfer window opens. So it will be kind of a short-term outlook if they were to do that, but don't rule out centre-back coming in.
OK, all right, let's take a quick break. Loads to come, including Newcastle's pursuit of Mark Guehi, another signing at West Ham, and we've got more from Manchester United, who could be close to getting a central midfielder. That and more to come. See you in a moment. Welcome back to the Transfer Show. Manchester United coming up shortly, but we have an update from Newcastle United. Tim.
Yeah, talks continue between Newcastle and Crystal Palace over the potential transfer of Mark Guehi. Now, we talked about this a little bit earlier on. Sky Sports News understands that Newcastle have had one offer already rejected by Palace, but they are expected to return with a higher bid. So the two clubs remain in dialogue, and there is a hope that this could happen quite quickly if an acceptable bid is made. Newcastle currently the only club at the table, but there are lots of other interested parties. Reports of an agreement being in place, we understand, are premature. We don't expect personal terms to be a problem on this one as well. One of the difficulties, though, for Newcastle is that they also need to recruit in other areas of the squad, in particular on the right-hand side of midfield. And although Eddie Howe is a big fan of the player, it would cost them most of their transfer budget for the summer to get him in. But things look to be moving on this one.
OK, so a bid rejected, Luke. How do you sporting directors come up with the price of a player? Is it like buying a house? Is it like, well, this house is like this one, this costs this much, so this costs this much?
It's not too dissimilar. You know, you look at the market for what players have been sold previously, and then you look at if they're a similar age, similar experience, length of contract's a big thing as well. And then you'll work it off that. I think the big thing as well is if how desperate the club are to sell the player. If the player's not in the manager's plans, that can alter the price slightly, which, you know, with Guehi going to Newcastle, I'm sure he is in the Crystal Palace plans, especially off the back of the Euros. But they'll probably look at it and see what other players have gone for, similar experience, age, etc., or unless if there is a buyout clause, which seems to be very popular now amongst players.
OK, all right. I promised Man United. Let's talk Man United. Dharmesh, PSG have confirmed the signing of João Neves from Benfica. What does that mean for United and their pursuit of Ugarte?
Well, even before PSG signed João Neves, the understanding was that PSG wanted to do a deal for Manuel Ugarte. He signed just last summer from Sporting Lisbon, but it hasn't worked out as well as he would have liked. He didn't get as much regular football as he wanted, and probably PSG thought he was going to get, given how much they'd spent. Manchester United, we know, remain interested in Ugarte, but not at the prices being quoted. We think that PSG want to make a profit on the 50-odd million pounds that they got Ugarte for last summer, so they want closer to like 60, 65 million pounds. So as well as a permanent move, we think that United are exploring a loan with an option and potentially an obligation as well. And maybe they're just looking at PSG's situation in that they've just spent that much money on someone like João Neves and thinking they might need to get rid of Ugarte. So let's just hold fire here because we can potentially get a better deal. As far as Ugarte is concerned, he's very open to the move to Old Trafford. Personal terms not expected to be a problem. United are looking at other midfielders as well. One of those remains Sofian Amrabat. He was on loan, of course, last season. There was an option price of 20 million euros. United don't want to pay that. They're still talking to Fiorentina about reducing that option price so that they can bring him in and maybe even consider another loan deal as well. But everything that I've been speaking about with United during this summer's transfer window, particularly after Lenny Yoro and Joshua Zirkzee came in, it's about budget and squad space. So they need to create money and they need to create space in the squad. With regard to midfield, we do know Scott McTominay could be key in anything United do with regard to that position. Now, we do know that dialogue remains open between Fulham and Manchester United over the signing of Scott McTominay. Fulham have yet to decide whether they're going to go back in for a third time. £17 million rejected, £20 million rejected. The gap in valuation is still there. If they find that that gap is insurmountable, they are prepared to walk away and focus on alternative targets. We know that there's a long-term admiration in Fluminense's Andre. So maybe they can use that and say to United, we're looking elsewhere unless you start bringing this price down. But if they do bring the price down, Fulham may go back to the negotiating table. OK,
you've told us all throughout this window that United, as you just said, squad space, that's the key for them. Are they looking to make squad space? Are they looking to bring more players in?
Yes. So we talked about the midfield area. Now, right back is another potential area that has emerged as a priority position simply because Aaron Wan-Bissaka's contract situation. Now, Luke will know all about this. When a player enters the final year of his contract, you end up having to be in a position of do we sell or do we renew? It's one of those two. You don't want to be in a position where they're going to go for free next summer. That's why United are still in negotiations with West Ham United, who are still pushing to get a deal done for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. We think that they're edging closer to an agreement with regard to the fee and the structure of payments. And personal terms, again, not expected to be a problem because we think Wan-Bissaka is really open to the move. If United can finalise that deal, they can then accelerate with other targets that they have. Now, we do know that dialogue is open with Bayern Munich, not for one player, but for two players. Nusayr Mazraoui, the right-back, and the centre-back, Matthias de Ligt. Both players want to come to Manchester United. Both players are represented by the same representative. So it should make it easier that they're at the same club and the same representative. But in keeping with United's dealings in this window, they want to be proactive. They want to do something that they weren't really doing before Ineos got there. In that, they might celebrate and think, what are we going to do now? We need to buy someone. Whereas this time, and I'm sure Luke will be able to throw light on this, they want to agree deals with numerous targets or get as far down the line with deals with numerous targets so that when the eventuality arrives that someone like Aaron Wan-Bissaka leaves, they can just go proactively and try and sign Nusayr Mazraoui because they would have done a lot of work in that department already. The same can be said about Matthias de Ligt. If someone like Victor Lindelof, who is key in this situation as well, because he's into the final year of his contract, if he's to leave, then they can fully pursue a deal for Matthias de Ligt as well.
So, on that, Luke, Dan Ashworth's come in. I know you know him well. As a result, do United look in better shape this summer than they have for a while?
Well, certainly with the appointment of Dan, they're in a lot better shape. And I think what the difference will be from this window going into the future, I think the recruitment will be led by the club. And what I mean by that, it will be Dan's decisions with the scouting, with Jason Wilcox, with the coach involved as well. Whereas I think previously it's been led by the manager. I think some of the signings you can see, Anthony, for example, has been led by the manager because he's had him previously. I think United are quite far behind the other clubs, the top clubs, the Chelseas, the Arsenals, Man Cities, Liverpools, not just in terms of the league table, but I think so in terms of, we're just talking about young players going, you look at Arsenal now, they're selling Smith Rowe for 30 million, and Nketiah would go for something similar. If Reece Nelson was going to get sold, it'd be something similar. Chelsea have been selling those young squad players for the last 4, 5, 6 years for good money. Liverpool have, Man City have. That's where Man United have got to get to. When I find it difficult to that Fulham value McTominay at 17 million, and I can understand why United have said no. So I think United, with Dan leading it, we look at the FA. Dan's went into the FA and built everything that we're seeing now, with the under-17s winning tournaments, the under-20s, and obviously now the main team. He's gone into Brighton. Brighton had some really good people there, led by the owner anyway, and then the CEO, Paul Barber. Paul Winstanley was his chief scout, who's now at Chelsea. And Dan would have added to that and helped it grow. He would have gone into Newcastle, then similar to Manchester United, with a big project to really take this club onwards. And obviously at Man United, I think then he's gone up again. Management is huge. He will start from the bottom. His focus will be on the transfer window now, as we're all aware. But I think he's got a lot to build. And I think in 18 months' time, 2 years' time, Man United will be in a much better place and slightly different to what they are or have been in the last 2 or 3 years.
Luke, you mentioned Dan Ashworth and the job potentially he could do and how far behind United are, these other clubs that you mentioned as well. Can you actually fathom, can you actually believe it's taken them this long to get a structure that is in line with what seems to be every other big club in the Premier League, every other big club in Europe?
No, I can't. I don't understand why it's taken this long. And I think from what people say, I think other clubs are surprised as well. And I think the bigger clubs have been quite happy to let them carry on how they were because it was one less to worry about. So the fact that Ineos have come in and they've got someone of Dan and they've got Omar, who's been at Man City as a new CEO, and Jason Wilcox with great experience. They are now going to go on a journey, and it will start off with the first team, like we're seeing now. And once this window's closed behind the scenes, the academy will start to get built, the women's team. New stadiums, training grounds, that's just stuff that happens away from the football side. But we will see now from the academy going up and Man United. And I think there's no point me saying by the end of the season because it takes time. And I think within 18 months, we'll see.
Do you expect this summer to be the turning point for Manchester United?
Yes. And I think we can see already with the recruitment, it's being led by the club, what I'd call the club. And I think you can see that already. And I think whatever happens between now and the end of this window, there's 1 or 2 to come in. I think there will be. If January might be quieter, purely because of the squad size. And then I think we'll see next summer again. It will go again. It will just keep going.
Do you expect Ineos to be patient with the manager? Give him time?
Yes, yes and no. And I think yes because they were making significant signings and they've got now a board and a sporting director in place that will support him. So they'll give him the time for that. However, they'll still want results. Now, obviously, the manager, from what he said previously, he's put 2 cups in the cabinet in recent years. So I think they'll be expecting a trophy again to go along with the progress that they're doing off the pitch. If they're struggling in the league, I think that will be the big decision making, because ultimately Ineos have come in, invested this money. They're putting people like Dan, Jason Wilcox, Omar in place, signing these players because they want to get back in the Champions League spots.
Yeah, indeed. West Ham spending money, over 100 million so far this summer. Latest signing, Nicholas Fullkrug. Just give us the figures, Dharmesh, for this deal.
Yeah, this one got announced just around 2.5 hours ago. West Ham United have signed Nicholas Fullkrug from Borussia Dortmund. The fee is worth in the region of £27.5 million, including performance-related add-ons. He signed a 4-year deal, which is really good for him, because he's 31 years old, remember. So sell-on value-wise, it's not going to be that much. So West Ham have signed someone who's a finished article who can go into the team and hopefully, for their sake, start scoring as soon as possible. He is someone that they've chased for a while. They wanted to sign him last summer when he was at Werder Bremen. He decided to go to Borussia Dortmund, signed a 3-year contract there. He stayed there for 1 season. West Ham United saw their chance and they've managed to bring him in. German international, of course, played a part in all of Germany's games at Euro 2024, and he scored twice there as well.
Feels like a good signing, that. West Ham, of course, already signed Crescencio Somerville from Leeds. Where's that left Leeds, Tim?
Looking for a replacement is the simple answer to that. And, of course, the clock is ticking. The new season starts this weekend, although when you look at the situation that Daniel Farke came into last summer, there was a lot of instability at Leeds. It's a very different picture this time around. So I think there's a lot of positivity, even though Archie Gray has left and Somerville has left as well. But they're interested in Jonathan Rowe at Norwich City, a player that Daniel Farke knows very, very well. 2 problems with this: whether they can meet the valuation that Norwich have set for the player, and also, will they sell to a Championship rival, given the fact they've already sold Gabriel Sara, one of their key players from last season, to Galatasaray this week. So the optics wouldn't look great if they sold 2 of their best players in the week leading up to the start of the new season. But Leeds are also interested in Jesarun Raksaki, a young player, young winger from Crystal Palace. Lots of other clubs looking at him as well. Very talented young player. That will be a loan deal. And Leeds are also looking at the option of Hugo Bueno from Wolves, a fullback. So they've got a few options. The problem that Leeds will have in attracting loan players is that they won't guarantee them first-team football. They're not going to be starters just because they've come in on loan. They've got to earn their place in the team. So it remains to be seen if those deals can get done. Leeds will be patient to get the right players in before the window closes. But I think ideally Daniel Farke would rather have the business done this week if he could.
I bet. When you were at West Brom, did you ever sell to a rival? Was it out? And if you did, how difficult is that?
No, the majority of our selling was when the first year I was there, when we lost in the playoff semi-final to Villa. We then had to get rid of some of the players, and some of the players then wanted to move on, and we were fortunate that we sold them all to Premier League clubs. It's interesting because Norwich might not want to sell to Leeds, but I would have a guess, I bet the boy wants to go to Leeds. And when the player wants to go, that's when sometimes you've got to go and get the best deal you possibly can for your club. Right. Once you hear or you see or the player comes to tell you that he wants to go and he's not going to be quite on board and he's always, that's when you think, right, let's just go and get the best deal for us, make everyone happy, and then we move on. But Norwich also want to get it done as quickly as possible if they are going to sell, to give them time to go and get a replacement in the window. Yeah,
I bet Norwich, as you said, Norwich fans not happy with that. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, news of all 20 Premier League clubs on the way, and Chris Sutton's got a view on everything, hasn't he? Well, we've asked him about Conor Gallagher and that move to Spain. Hear what he's had to say next. See you in a moment.
Time now to go around the club.
Certainly is, Tim. Spain midfielder Mikel Merino has returned to training at Real Sociedad following Spain's Euro 2024 victory amid interest from Arsenal.
According to reports in Portugal, João Felix hasn't even flinched at the idea of joining Aston Villa. He has his heart set on re-signing for Barcelona.
As for Bournemouth, they've had no contact from anyone regarding Dominic Solanke and do not want to sell the striker.
Ivan Toney has returned to training at Brentford following an extended break after the Euros. He has 1 year left on his contract.
Brighton are in talks with Celtic over a deal to sign the midfielder Matt O'Reilly.
Conor Gallagher has agreed to join Atletico Madrid after Chelsea finalised a deal with the Spanish club.
Mark Guehi is the latest Crystal Palace asset to be targeted by a rival. Newcastle United want the defender who shone at Euro 2024. One bid already rejected. Talks continue.
Everton want to strengthen their midfield options following Amado Onana's move to Aston Villa. Calvin Phillips has been considered.
Fulham deciding whether to go back in with an improved offer for Manchester United midfielder Scott McTominay.
Talks continue between Ipswich Town and Blackburn Rovers over the signing of striker Sammy Smodics.
Steve Cooper wants to add a winger or forward to his Leicester squad ahead of the new season. Progress could be made this week.
Liverpool are open to offers for defender Joe Gomez to leave permanently this summer and want £20 million for Sepp van den Berg.
Atletico Madrid have held positive talks with Manchester City over a deal for forward Julian Alvarez. The clubs are now working on a fee and a structure.
As we've been hearing, Manchester United and West Ham remain in talks over the sale of Aaron Wan-Bissaka.
And as we've also been hearing, Newcastle remain in talks with Crystal Palace over that deal for Mark Guehi.
Northern Ireland international Aaron Donnelly could leave Nottingham Forest and join Dundee in a permanent deal.
Southampton considering a second bid for Fabio Carvalho after Liverpool rejected their opening £15 million offer.
Tottenham head coach Ange Postecoglou says the club are light in the attacking department. A versatile forward is their priority.
West Ham United have signed forward Nicholas Fullkrug from Borussia Dortmund. The fee is in the region of £27.5 million all in. He signed a 4-year deal.
And Leeds United are interested in signing Wolves fullback Hugo Bueno.
Now, Conor Gallagher is in Madrid for that potential move to Atletico Madrid. A deal worth £34 million has been agreed between the clubs. This is what Chris Sutton makes of the move.
Since January, I think he was heavily linked with Tottenham and getting away from Chelsea. That surprised me a little bit. I think it's been, it's the heartbeat of the team last season. I think he was Chelsea's second best player behind Cole Palmer last season. He began his career at Chelsea, went through the ranks. He's been put out on loan numerous times, but I still think that he should have an integral part to play at Chelsea. It doesn't seem that that's going to be the way now. And I saw last week that I thought there was a fee agreed with Atletico Madrid, but now it looks like it is going to get done. Listen, Chelsea are in a bit of a muddle. They're looking for stability. A new manager has come in, but I personally think that he will be a big loss to the Chelsea team.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what do you think Enzo Maresca is thinking about this? Because he's going to have to mould a team that are going to be much more competitive than they were last season.
Yep, absolutely. And look, I mean, Enzo Fernandez, Moses Caicedo, Dewsbury Hall in the midfield, but Conor Gallagher could still have played a strong part in the Chelsea team this season. So I think he's going to be a big miss. There was, talk of Chelsea needing to free up some funds so they could spend again, and to sacrifice Conor Gallagher seems a really strange decision from Chelsea.
Chris Sutton there. Right, we're going to take a break. Loads to come, though. We've got more from Arsenal and Newcastle. Could Brighton beat Chelsea to a midfielder? Plus, we're going to discuss Chido Obi Martin, the 16-year-old striker who's left Arsenal to join Manchester United. That and more to come. See you in a bit. Last part of the transfer show already. Time is flying. Now, we were speaking about Newcastle a bit earlier, but Tim, they're working on a couple of deals, so tell us.
Yeah, Mark Guehi, we've mentioned already. Talks continue between Newcastle and Crystal Palace. One offer from Newcastle has been rejected. We expect them to go in with a second offer, but reports that an agreement is in place are premature, but those discussions continue. But Newcastle do have a player in the North East having a medical today, and that is Osula, a young striker from Sheffield United. He was actually 21 on Sunday. So nice birthday present for him. A move to Newcastle, fee £15 million up front with £5 million in add-ons. A player who's got lots of potential. I saw him a lot at Sheffield United last season, and I think certainly one for the future, but might be able to contribute now as well.
OK, Mikel Merino, Arsenal fans will be hoping will be contributing fairly soon, but he was back at Real Sociedad today, Darmis. So what does that mean about Arsenal's interest in him?
I mean, they still have retained an interest in the player. They're continuing to explore the conditions of a potential deal, but as far as we're aware, there has been no formal approach yet or a formal bid from Arsenal to Real Sociedad. They're just discussing internally about what their next steps are going to be. He's entered the final year of his contract, but we all saw his quality during Euro 2024, played a big part for Spain in that victorious campaign, including the winning goal against Germany, of course, in the quarter-finals. But he is, it should be said, one of a number of players under consideration at Arsenal about who they want to fill that gap in midfield.
What about Eddie Nketiah? Is he going or is he staying?
So Marseille are still very interested. They've gone in with 2 bids, been rebuffed on both occasions. It just now is a case of Marseille discussing internally as well whether they're going to go back in with an improved offer. But there is an open dialogue between the two clubs. Arsenal have received those 2 bids and rejected them, but now they're waiting to see if Marseille do come back. However, there's a player called Youssoufa Moukoko from Borussia Dortmund, 19-year-old, highly rated, and he's another player that Marseille are looking at in the forward positions as well. I'm not saying it's instead of Eddie Nketiah. There's no reason to not believe that they could be going for both of those players. But Marseille definitely want to strengthen in that position. Nketiah is one that they've looked at, that they've made bids for, and Moukoko is another one.
So Nketiah could be on his way out. Arsenal could also lose their 16-year-old superstar, Chido Obi Martin. You told us he was going to United. Is that done? Is it close?
The deal's been agreed between Manchester United and Chido Obi Martin and his representatives. So that part of it is done. We're expecting him to have a medical this week. He's only 16 years old. There was a lot of talk when he had agreed a contract with Arsenal but didn't sign that contract. That was because it wasn't to do, as the information I've got, financial motivation. It was more to do with the pathway into the first team and the project that Arsenal had. He felt that he would be best served going elsewhere to do that. Now, the deal that he's got with Manchester United, he could have actually got a better one had he gone to one of the German clubs that were interested in signing him. But he thought Manchester United is probably the best place to further his career as far as he's concerned. So we're expecting a medical at some point this week. One source has even said that he's up in Manchester already ready to do that medical. OK, so Darmis says, Luke, that he could have gone for more money elsewhere. He's still going to be on an awful lot of money for a 16-year-old. What are the pitfalls of signing somebody so young on so much money?
But the main thing is you're signing potential. So you don't know what the end product looks like. You have an idea, obviously, hence why you're signing that player. But at 16, it is potential only. It's one of the things that is really frustrating. We had it a lot at West Brom, losing players to Aston Villa, and you know every other club has it as well. Is a player can only sign their first professional contract at 17. Now I'm sure Arsenal have been in contact with his agent and his representatives a lot about getting to his 17th birthday and offering him a deal. You can only sign a 3-year contract at that age as well. But because nothing's agreed in writing, a club can come in and hijack that deal like Man United have done. Those two clubs then need to agree compensation. The thing with getting more money abroad is because obviously if they go abroad under the age of 24, the compensation is set by UEFA, which I think is close to something like €290,000. So obviously, when Man United and Arsenal speak about trying to get a fee for this boy away from the compensation rules, it'll be a lot more than that. So, but it's Man United again, as we mentioned earlier, trying to be aggressive in the academy now in the recruitment, going to sign the better young players out there. But that is the only concern you have at 16. It's still potential.
Oh, OK. I want to whiz through a couple of names, gentlemen. Tim, for you, Matt O'Reilly, what's the latest with him?
Yeah, Brighton are in talks with Celtic over a deal for Matt O'Reilly. He's a player that's actually been linked away from Celtic over the last couple of transfer windows. Atalanta have had several bids rejected already. But Celtic think a lot of the player, so the sale will only go through on their terms.
David Fofana, Dharmesh?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because Chelsea will listen to offers for the striker David Datro Fofana. Their preference would be to have a guarantee that at some point that deal will become permanent. So either permanently straight away or a loan with an obligation. At least one Premier League club are understood to be interested. We understand that Stuttgart are one of a number of European clubs who are keen. And you'll recall last season, he spent the second half of last season on loan at Burnley. He started 10 Premier League games and scored 4 goals.
We're running out of time, but I want to get this on you. Edu this week has said, I've had to make difficult decisions, and now Arsenal are seeing the fruit of those decisions. Is that the sporting director's job in a nutshell, that sometimes they make really unpopular decisions, but they're doing it for the good of the club?
Yep, that's all you do. You do what's best for the club. Supporters might not see it, supporters might not agree with it, because they're the main people that make the noise. But that's what you've got to do. You know, the club employ you. That's your duty to do what's best for them, whether that's selling a player, signing a player, keeping a manager, sacking a manager. And it is difficult because there's emotion. You get emotionally attached to players and staff, but ultimately it comes back to you've got to do what's best for the club and try, if you can, block out the noise from the supporters.
Luke, it's been an absolute pleasure having you in the studio, giving us an insight from inside a club. Dharmesh, Tim, as always, thank you very much. So, the transfer window continues. It feels like it's really bubbling. Lots of deals on the go. Much more on the transfer show tomorrow. We're back at 5 and at 7. Next, though, Sky Sports News with all the Olympic news. We'll see you.